Have you ever given your all to someone only to realize they never truly saw your worth? You were always there, always available, always supportive, always reliable. And yet, they acted as if your presence was a given, something they never had to earn. They didn't appreciate you, they took you for granted. Let me ask you something, how does that feel? It's frustrating, right? It makes you question yourself. Was I too kind, too giving, too easy to have? The worst part? When you finally decide to walk away, they still assume you'll be there waiting for them. But here's the truth, you have more power than you think. And no, I'm not talking about cheap revenge or playing mind games. That's a waste of your energy. I'm talking about transformation, turning the tables in a way that forces them to recognize your value. When you do this right, they'll suffer, not because you inflicted pain on them, but because they'll realize far too late that they lost something priceless. This isn't about hurting them. It's about reclaiming your power. It's about breaking free from their grip and becoming someone they can't ignore. It's about becoming so strong, so fulfilled, and so independent that their absence no longer bothers you. And when they finally realize what they've lost, trust me, that's when they'll suffer. Sounds like something you need. Stay with me. By the end of this video, you'll have the tools to shift the power dynamic completely. This is about Stoic relationships, learning to control yourself rather than being controlled by others. The principles here are rooted in Stoicism, a philosophy that teaches us how to be unshakable in the face of disrespect. And it all starts with the first, most powerful move you can make: walking away. 1. The power of walking away. Think about how people treat things they assume will always be there. They don't value them. The air they breathe, the water that flows from the faucet, the Wi-Fi that connects their devices. These things are taken for granted because they're constant, always available, never demanding attention. But the moment they're gone, everything changes. A weak Wi-Fi signal suddenly becomes an urgent crisis. A shortage of clean water can shut down an entire city. Even the simple act of losing something as mundane as a phone charger becomes a problem that disrupts daily life. The absence of something people once ignored forces them to notice, to care, to regret. That's exactly what happens when you walk away from someone who has taken you for granted. When you were always available, when you always answered the phone, when you always showed up, your presence became background noise. They assumed you'd always be there, no matter how they treated you. But when you remove yourself completely, they are forced to experience life without you. And that is when suffering begins. However, walking away is not a performance. It's not about making a scene or delivering a dramatic speech about how they'll regret losing you. That's just another form of seeking validation, another attempt to make them see your worth. But here's the truth. If they truly valued you, you wouldn't have to convince them. Real power isn't in words, it's in action. Walking away means genuinely, completely disappearing from their world. No explanations, no warnings, no final messages telling them what they did wrong. Just silence. A common mistake people make is threatening to leave, but never actually doing it. They say, "I'm done," but then answer the phone when their name pops up. They say, "I won't tolerate this anymore," but then go right back the moment they feel lonely. Each time you return after making an emotional exit, you reinforce their belief that they can take you for granted. They learn that you're not serious, that no matter how much they neglect or disrespect you, you'll always be there when they decide to acknowledge you again. That's why real walking away requires discipline. It requires the strength to endure the discomfort of separation without running back the moment they start showing signs of missing you. This is where Stoicism becomes essential. Stoicism teaches that true strength isn't found in controlling others, it's found in controlling yourself. It's about removing emotional dependence, refusing to let someone else's validation determine your self-worth. When you walk away with a stoic mindset, you do it without resentment, without anger, without the need for revenge. You simply recognize that you are no longer valued, and instead of fighting for scraps of appreciation, you remove yourself entirely. You walk away not to punish them, but to free yourself. At first, they might not notice. They might assume you'll come back like always. But then, days pass, weeks. The realization creeps in. Something is different. The person they once depended on, the one who was always there, is suddenly gone. No more late-night conversations when they're feeling lonely. No more automatic support when they're struggling. No more reliable presence they can fall back on whenever they please. And that's when the shift happens. That's when they start feeling what they never expected to feel: loss. Loss is powerful because it forces people to confront reality. Until now, they assumed you needed them more than they needed you. But your absence proves otherwise. It makes them question their assumptions, their choices, their priorities. It makes them wonder if they underestimated you, if they misjudged your worth. And that uncertainty, that lingering thought that they might have made a mistake, is the suffering they never saw coming. Some people will react by trying to regain control. They'll reach out casually, as if nothing happened, just to see if you'll respond. If you do, they win. They'll know they still have a hold over you, that their past behavior didn't have real consequences. But if you don't, if you remain silent, detached, focused on your own life, that's when their suffering deepens. Because now they have to sit with the reality that you are no longer within their grasp. They have to live with the knowledge that they pushed away someone who once cared about them, and there is nothing they can do to undo it. And what about you? You move on. You redirect all that energy, all that time, all that emotion into yourself. You build a life that no longer revolves around their presence or their approval. And in doing so, you prove something far more powerful than words ever could. You were never the one who needed them. They were the ones who needed you. That is the power of walking away. It is not revenge. It is not manipulation. It is the ultimate form of self-respect. The moment you truly master this, you will never be taken for granted again. 2. Stop being too available. Availability breeds complacency. Think about it. When something is always within reach, it loses its value. People don't appreciate what they can have at any moment. They assume it will always be there. And that's exactly what happens when you make yourself too accessible in relationships. When you're always the first to text, always quick to answer calls, always adjusting your schedule to accommodate theirs, you're sending a silent message. My time and energy belong to you, no matter how you treat me. But the harsh reality is people rarely respect what they don't have to work for. Ask yourself this: have you ever been in a situation where you gave someone unlimited access to your time and attention, only to realize they stopped valuing you? It happens all the time. At first they appreciate it, they enjoy your company, your consistency, your willingness to always be there. But over time, that appreciation fades. Why? Because humans are wired to value scarcity. It's a psychological truth. What is rare feels more important. What is hard to get feels more desirable. When you're constantly available, when you never give them the chance to miss you, you're stripping yourself of that value. Let's be honest. How often do you check in on people who never go silent? How often do you wonder about someone who is always just a text away? Now compare that to how you feel when someone who used to always respond suddenly becomes distant. When someone who once made time for you is suddenly unavailable, your mind starts asking questions. Why aren't they responding? Are they busy? Have they moved on? That sense of curiosity, of missing someone's presence, is a natural reaction to their absence. And that's exactly why being less available makes you more valuable. This isn't about playing games. It's not about manipulating people into chasing you. It's about breaking the cycle of being taken for granted by creating space for people to appreciate you. When you pull back, not as a tactic, but as a genuine shift in how you value your own time, you change the dynamic. You stop giving people the illusion that your time is endless and can be taken for granted. Instead, you make them realize that being in your life is a privilege, not a guarantee. The key is gradual withdrawal. If you've been someone's emotional crutch, if you've always dropped everything for them, you can't suddenly disappear overnight. That would be too obvious. Instead, start small. Respond to messages on your time, not theirs. Don't always be the first to reach out. Make plans that don't revolve around them. Prioritize yourself, your goals, your hobbies, your own social life. If they truly care, they'll notice the shift, they'll feel the distance, and if they don't, that tells you everything you need to know about where you stand in their life. Some people will test you. They'll act indifferent at first, pretending they don't notice that you're pulling back. But over time, their actions will betray them. You'll see them start initiating more. You'll notice their tone shift when they realize they no longer have unlimited access to you. And if they try to pull away even further, hoping you'll chase after them, let them. The whole point of this is to stop chasing, to stop proving yourself, to stop overgiving to people who don't reciprocate. This is where Stoic relationships come into play. A Stoic does not beg for attention. A Stoic does not overextend themselves for people who only take. Instead, they focus inward, mastering their emotions, their responses, their ability to walk away from things that no longer serve them. The moment you embrace this mindset, everything changes. You no longer react impulsively to someone else's indifference. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth through constant availability. Instead, you let people experience the weight of your absence and allow them to make their own choice. Either step up and meet me halfway, or watch me move on without you. And here's the irony. The moment you stop being too available is the moment people start paying attention. Suddenly, your presence feels more valuable. Your time becomes something they have to earn rather than something they can just take. And that shift, that realization that you are no longer always there, is what creates impact. It forces people to confront the truth. They never had control over you. They only had as much access as you allowed them to have. If you've made it this far, then you're already beginning to understand the power of reclaiming your time. Now take a second and let me know in the comments. Like and type #1 if this message resonates with you. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because the next step in this journey will change the way you see yourself forever. 3. Level up your life without them. There is a simple but brutal truth that most people don't want to hear. The best way to make someone regret taking you for granted is to become someone they can no longer reach. Not through revenge, not through begging, not through trying to make them jealous, but by genuinely elevating your life to a level where their absence no longer matters. If you want to make them suffer, don't focus on them at all. Focus on yourself. Become so much better, so much stronger, so much more fulfilled that they are forced to see what they lost, without you ever needing to say a single word. This is where most people fail. They spend all their energy trying to win the breakup, trying to prove a point, trying to get a reaction. But in doing so, they stay trapped in the same cycle of seeking external validation. That is the exact opposite of power. True power comes when you break free from that cycle, when you stop living for their approval and start living for yourself. That's when everything changes. The first step is to shift your mindset from loss to opportunity. If someone has taken you for granted, it means they never truly saw your value. And if they never saw your value, why are you wasting your time proving it to them? Instead, take that time and invest it where it actually matters, on yourself. Think about it. How much of your energy was spent trying to maintain that relationship? How many times did you put your own needs on hold just to accommodate them? How many things did you sacrifice? Your goals, your time, your well-being, just to keep them happy. Now imagine what would happen if you took all of that energy and poured it into yourself instead. Imagine how unstoppable you would be. Start by taking an honest look at your life. Where are the areas you've been neglecting? Your health, your career, your passions, your social life? Pick one and start improving it today. If you've been feeling insecure about your appearance, hit the gym, upgrade your wardrobe, take better care of yourself. If you've been stuck in the same routine, start exploring new hobbies, meeting new people, expanding your experiences. If you've been settling for less in your career, push yourself to level up, take risks, demand more for yourself. The goal is not just to look better or to create the illusion of success. It's to actually become better in every way. Because when you do that, you don't just make them regret losing you. You make yourself stop caring whether they regret it or not. And here's the key. You have to do this for you, not for them. If you're only leveling up because you want them to notice, you're still giving them control over you. You're still letting them dictate your actions, your growth, your progress. That is not real power. Real power comes when you reach a point where their opinion is irrelevant. When you're so focused on your own journey, your own success, your own happiness, that their presence or absence makes no difference at all. That is when they truly suffer. Because nothing is more painful than realizing that someone who once needed you doesn't anymore. The moment you start to improve yourself, people notice. Not just the one who took you for granted, but everyone around you. Your energy shifts. You carry yourself differently. You become more confident, more attractive, more magnetic. And suddenly, the same person who once dismissed you, who once assumed you would always be there, starts paying attention. They see the glow up. They hear about the new things you're doing. They realize that while they stayed the same, you kept moving forward. And that realization hurts. But here's the most important part. By the time they finally wake up and see your worth, you won't care anymore, because you'll be too busy living your best life to even notice them. This is what Stoicism teaches us. Detachment from external validation, mastery over our own emotions, and the ability to move forward without being held back by the past. In the end, the best revenge is not proving your worth to them. It's realizing you never needed to in the first place. 4. Show indifference, even if you still care. Indifference is one of the most powerful psychological tools you can use when someone has taken you for granted. The moment they realize that you no longer react, no longer seek their attention, no longer show signs of needing them, they start questioning everything. They wonder if you ever truly cared. They second-guess their own importance in your life. And most of all, they feel the weight of losing control. The truth is, people crave validation, even from those they claim not to value. And when that validation is removed, the void it leaves behind is impossible to ignore. But let's be real, indifference is not easy. When someone has mattered to you, when you've invested time, energy, and emotions into them, pretending they don't exist is unnatural. That's why you don't have to pretend. You just have to stop showing your emotions to them. This is where people often fail. They think indifference means putting on an act, acting cold, or forcing themselves to not care. But that's not true indifference. True indifference is internal. It's when you no longer feel the need to prove a point, when you don't seek revenge, when you're simply unbothered by their presence or absence. It's when you've reached a level of peace so deep that their actions no longer affect you. But how do you get to that point? How do you show indifference when you still care? The first step is controlling your reactions. Think about it. If they text you right now, what would be your first instinct? If you feel the urge to respond immediately, ask yourself why. Is it because you want to? Or is it because you want them to know you're still there? Most of the time, it's the latter. Most of the time, people respond out of habit, out of a subconscious need to remind the other person of their presence. But when you master control over your reactions, when you train yourself to pause before responding, you shift the power dynamic. You no longer act on impulse, you act with purpose. The second step is detaching from the outcome. One of the core principles of Stoicism is learning to accept what you cannot control. You cannot control whether they miss you. You cannot control whether they regret losing you. You cannot control how they feel about you, but you can control how you respond. You can control where you place your energy. And once you accept that, once you genuinely internalize the fact that their opinion of you is irrelevant to your self-worth, you achieve true freedom. This is what Stoic relationships are all about: building emotional resilience, valuing yourself independently of external validation, and refusing to be affected by someone else's lack of appreciation. The third step is living in a way that naturally creates indifference. If your life revolves around them, if every decision you make is based on how they might react, you will never truly be free. But when you start building a life so fulfilling, so full of purpose, so exciting that they become a distant memory, indifference happens effortlessly. You don't have to try to act like you don't care. You genuinely won't care. And nothing is more painful for someone who once had control over you than realizing that they no longer hold any power in your life. Imagine this scenario. They send a text. A month ago, that text would have made your heart race. You would have overanalyzed it, debated whether to respond, tried to decipher hidden meanings. But now, you see it, you acknowledge it, and you move on. Maybe you respond, maybe you don't. But the difference is, you don't need to. You don't feel that pull, that desperation, that need to be noticed. You've detached. You've won. This is the power of indifference. And this is why it makes them suffer. Because when someone expects a reaction and gets nothing, when they anticipate a response and are met with silence when they try to re-enter your life, only to realize that they no longer have a place in it, they are forced to confront something they never wanted to admit. They were never as important to you as they thought they were. And here's the truth. By the time they finally recognize your worth, by the time they finally wake up and see what they lost, you won't care anymore, because you'll be too busy living your best life, focused on your own growth, surrounded by people who actually appreciate you. That is the ultimate win. That is the ultimate revenge. If you're resonating with this, then you're already on the right path. Like this video and comment number 1 if you're ready to embrace this mindset. And don't forget to subscribe for more content that will change the way you approach relationships forever. The next step in this journey will take everything you've learned so far and push it to the next level, so make sure you don't miss it. 5. Reverse the dynamic, make them chase you. People always want what they can't have. It's a simple, undeniable truth of human nature. The moment something becomes scarce, its value increases. The moment something is no longer guaranteed, it becomes desirable. This is why people tend to want you the most when you no longer need them. It's why they start noticing you the second you stop noticing them. When you were available, when you were eager, when you were always the one putting in the effort, they felt no urgency. But the second you pull away, the second you stop proving yourself, the second they feel your absence rather than your presence, everything changes. To make someone chase you, you must become someone worth chasing. That means shifting your focus entirely away from them and onto yourself. This is where most people go wrong. They think making someone chase them is about playing mind games, about making them jealous, about creating artificial distance to get a reaction. But that's not real power. That's just another form of seeking validation. True power comes when you genuinely elevate yourself to a level where they feel the need to prove themselves to you. The process begins with creating mystery and unpredictability. One of the reasons people take others for granted is because they feel like they know them too well. They know your patterns, they know your habits, they know exactly how you'll react in every situation. There is no uncertainty, no excitement, no tension, and that predictability breeds complacency. But the moment you change, the moment you break your usual patterns, the moment you become unpredictable, they start paying attention again. Suddenly, they're not sure if you'll answer their text. Suddenly, they don't know what you're thinking. Suddenly, they realize that they don't have you figured out, and that realization creates a powerful shift in their perception of you. Think about it. What happens when a TV show becomes too predictable? People lose interest. What happens when a story follows the exact same formula every time? People stop caring. But when there's an unexpected twist, when the plot takes a sudden turn, when something new happens, people become engaged again. This is how human attention works, and it applies to relationships just as much as it applies to entertainment. If you want to make someone chase you, you must become someone they can't predict. That means evolving, growing, changing, not for them, but for yourself. This leads to the second key principle. Scarcity creates demand. The more rare and exclusive something is, the more people want it. If you make yourself too accessible, too available, too easy to have, you diminish your own value. But when you create space, when you limit access, when you make it clear through your actions, not your words, that your time and energy are not something to be taken lightly, people start paying attention. They realize that being in your life is not a given. It is something that must be earned. This is exactly how high-value individuals operate. They don't beg for attention. They don't overextend themselves. They don't try to convince others of their worth. They simply are valuable, and that value is naturally recognized. They don't chase, they attract. And that is what makes people chase them. Another powerful psychological shift happens when you start prioritizing your own desires and standards above everything else. One of the biggest reasons people are taken for granted is because they put others' needs above their own. They compromise too much. They adjust too easily. They make themselves too available. But when you start setting standards, when you become clear on what you will and will not tolerate, you create a new dynamic. The person who once took you for granted now has to prove themselves to you. They have to wonder whether they still have access to you. They have to work for your attention. And here's the truth. Most people don't value what is given freely. They value what they have to work for. If you're always initiating, always making plans, always ensuring their comfort, they feel no urgency. They assume you'll always be there. But if you stop chasing, if you stop making them the center of your world, if you stop giving without receiving, they are forced to confront something uncomfortable. They no longer have control over you. This is why Stoicism is such a powerful tool in relationships. A Stoic does not beg for attention. A Stoic does not react emotionally to rejection or indifference. A Stoic does not seek external validation. Instead, they remain centered, unshaken, completely at peace with themselves. They understand that real power is not found in making someone like them. It's found in being completely unaffected by whether someone likes them or not. When you embody this mindset, you create a gravitational pull that makes people want to be in your orbit, because nothing is more attractive than someone who is completely comfortable on their own. And here's where the real shift happens. By the time they finally realize your worth, by the time they start chasing you, by the time they finally see what they lost, you won't even care anymore because you'll have outgrown them. You'll have reached a level of self-respect and self-worth so unshakable that their validation is meaningless. And that, more than anything, is what will make them suffer. Not because you wanted revenge, not because you played games, but because they will have to live with the fact that they had you and lost you because they didn't appreciate you when they had the chance. 6. Surround yourself with new people. One of the most common reactions to being taken for granted is isolation. People withdraw, close themselves off, and sit in silence, replaying memories of what went wrong, wondering why the other person didn't see their worth. This is the biggest mistake you can make. The longer you isolate yourself, the longer you keep that person at the center of your thoughts, and the more power you give to them. But if you want to truly shift the dynamic, if you want to make them feel the weight of losing you, then you need to do the exact opposite. You need to surround yourself with new people. You need to step into spaces where you are valued, where your presence is appreciated, where you are not just an option, but a priority. Humans are social creatures. Whether we realize it or not, we measure our value based on how others perceive us. This is called social proof, a psychological phenomenon where people determine the worth of something based on how others treat it. It's why people line up outside certain restaurants while ignoring others, why products with high ratings sell more, and why people suddenly become more interested in someone the moment they see others paying attention to them. This is exactly why surrounding yourself with new people is so powerful. When someone who once took you for granted sees you thriving in a new social circle, when they see others appreciating you, when they realize that life has continued without them, it forces them to question everything they assumed about you. They assumed you would wait. They assumed you needed them. They assumed your world revolved around them, but now they see something different. They see you moving forward. They see you engaging with new people, building new connections, creating new experiences, and suddenly they feel the emptiness of your absence in a way they never expected. They start to wonder, did I underestimate them? Did I lose someone irreplaceable? That doubt, that creeping realization, is what makes them suffer. But here's the key. This only works if it's authentic. If you are forcing yourself into social situations just to make them jealous, if you are posting pictures with new people just to get a reaction, if you are pretending to be happy while secretly checking their social media, then you are not actually moving forward. You are still living for their approval. And that is not real power. Real power comes when you genuinely immerse yourself in new environments, when you truly invest in new relationships, when you fill your life with so much value that their absence no longer matters. Start by putting yourself in spaces where you can meet new people, join new groups, attend events, take up a new hobby, travel to places you've never been. Not because you are trying to prove anything, but because this is how growth happens. The more you expand your world, the more you realize how small that past relationship was in the grand scheme of things. You begin to see that there are so many people out there who appreciate you, who recognize your worth, who don't need to lose you to understand what they have. And when you truly embrace this, you stop looking back. Because why would you? Why would you waste time thinking about someone who failed to see your value when you are now surrounded by people who do? This shift in mindset changes everything. When you were in their life, they had no urgency. They assumed you would always be around. But now, as they see you in a new environment, as they hear about your new connections, as they realize you are no longer waiting for them, panic sets in. And that panic comes from loss. The loss of control, the loss of importance, the loss of knowing that you once cared. They will try to act like it doesn't bother them. They will pretend they don't notice. But deep down they do. Because when someone who once belonged to their world is now thriving in a completely different one, it creates an undeniable sense of regret. This is the essence of Stoic relationships, understanding that you do not need to chase, you do not need to beg, you do not need to convince someone of your worth. A Stoic does not cling to the past. A Stoic does not wait for someone to come back. A Stoic moves forward with strength, confidence, and certainty, knowing that life is always offering new opportunities, new experiences, new connections. And when you embody this mindset, you become magnetic, not just to the one who took you for granted, but to everyone around you. Because confidence, self-respect, and growth are attractive. They make people want to be around you. They make people realize that you are someone worth having in their life. By the time they recognize your value, by the time they realize what they lost, by the time they start missing you, it will be too late. Because you won't be waiting. You won't even be thinking about them. You will be too busy living a life so full, so rich, so deeply fulfilling, that their absence will feel like nothing more than a distant memory. And that is the ultimate power move. Not because you wanted revenge, not because you played games, but because you outgrew them. And now they have to live with the reality that they had you and lost you. If you've made it this far, it means you're serious about taking back your power. Like this video and comment number 1 if you're ready to step into this mindset. And make sure to subscribe, because the next step in this journey will show you why you don't even need to seek revenge. Life has a way of handling that for you. 7. Let karma do the work. There is a simple, undeniable truth that many people fail to grasp. You do not need to seek revenge on those who took you for granted. Life has a way of handling that for you. Karma is not some mystical force. It is the natural consequence of people's actions, the undeniable reality that what you put out into the world always comes back to you in some way. Those who fail to appreciate what they have, those who take others for granted, those who assume that kindness, loyalty, and presence are guaranteed, these people always, without fail, come to regret their choices. But here's the secret. By the time they realize it, by the time they finally see your worth, you will be long gone. Most people, when they are hurt, when they feel abandoned, when they have been dismissed, immediately focus on one thing: getting even. They want to make the other person suffer, to make them feel the same pain, to prove a point. But that is a waste of energy, because the moment you make revenge your goal, you are still emotionally tied to them. You are still making them the center of your thoughts, still allowing them to control your emotions. That is not power. That is not freedom. True power is indifference. True power is knowing that you do not need to lift a finger to make them suffer, because life will do it for you. People who take others for granted always repeat the same cycle. They assume that good people will always be there. They assume that loyalty is endless, that no matter how they behave, they will be forgiven. They assume that they can always come back, but reality does not work that way. One day, they will meet someone who treats them the same way they treated you. One day, they will be on the receiving end of neglect, of indifference, of being taken for granted. And in that moment, they will remember you. They will remember the way you cared, the way you showed up, the way you gave without expecting anything in return. And it will hit them. They lost someone who was irreplaceable. This is not something you have to force. This is not something you have to orchestrate. It happens naturally because people only truly appreciate something after they have lost it. This is a lesson they will learn on their own. And that lesson will come with regret, with late-night thoughts, with quiet moments of reflection where they finally understand that they had something good and they let it slip away. And you will not be there to see it. You will not be waiting for an apology, for closure, for validation. You will be too busy living your life, too busy thriving, too busy being someone they can never reach again. This is why Stoicism is so powerful. A Stoic does not waste energy on revenge. A Stoic does not obsess over what others do or don't do. A Stoic does not hold on to resentment, because resentment is just another form of attachment. Instead, they accept reality. They focus on their own growth, their own path, their own purpose. And in doing so, they naturally rise above the people who once dismissed them. They become untouchable, not because they sought revenge, but because they outgrew the need for it. When you embrace this mindset, everything changes. You stop looking back. You stop hoping for them to realize what they lost. You stop needing closure, because the only closure you need is knowing that you walked away with your dignity intact. You gave them a chance. You showed them your value. They failed to see it. And now that is their burden to carry, not yours. The beauty of life is that it always balances itself out. The person who took you for granted will one day feel the same emptiness they once made you feel. They will look around and realize that the people they prioritized over you were never truly there for them. They will experience loneliness, regret, and the pain of being unseen, and that will be their karma. Not because you wished it upon them, not because you sought it, but because that is the inevitable result of their actions. And by then, you will be far beyond their reach. You will have built a life so full, so rich, so meaningful that their absence will feel like nothing more than a distant memory. And that, more than anything, is what will make them suffer, not because you wanted them to, but because they will. Know, deep down, that they lost someone who was never coming back. At the end of the day, the best way to make someone suffer for taking you for granted is not by seeking revenge, not by playing mind games, not by wasting your energy trying to prove your worth to someone who failed to see it. The best way to make them suffer is by becoming someone they can never have access to again. When you walk away, when you stop being too available, when you level up your life, when you show indifference, when you shift the dynamics so they have to chase you, when you surround yourself with people who genuinely value you, and when you let karma handle the rest, you don't just make them regret losing you. You make yourself so powerful, so fulfilled, so untouchable that their opinion becomes meaningless. And that is when you truly win. By the time they realize what they lost, you won't care anymore. You won't be waiting for them to come back. You won't be hoping for an apology. You won't be wondering if they finally understand your worth. You will have moved on to something far greater, yourself. And that realization will hit them harder than anything you could ever say or do. Because nothing haunts a person more than knowing they had something good and let it slip away forever. If this message resonated with you, if you are ready to step into this mindset, like this video and comment number 1 below. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, because this is just the beginning. There is so much more power waiting for you on the other side of indifference, and I'm here to help you find it.